Whiteboard Wednesday. Today I'm going to show you step by step how to learn a language from scratch. Okay? It's quite simple actually. So, learn a language, first of all, what does learn a language involve? Mostly two things: understanding the language and speaking it. Yeah? Simple. You need to learn to understand and speak. You might want to learn to write as well in some cases. If you learn in English, you should definitely learn to write well. It's going to be very useful for you, and especially for your business, your career, etc. If you write well in English, write well in general. But if you're learning a language just to talk to people when you go on holiday or something like that, you don't really need to focus on that. But okay, we could, yeah, we could talk about this as well. Why not? It's not that complicated to learn to write halfway well, at least. Okay, first thing you need is to understand, because you can't really say what you don't understand, right? So there are three main skills that you need to learn to understand a language. You need vocab. You need to know a lot of words to understand a language. Then you need to know pronunciation, and then you need you need grammar. In this order. Why? Well, you need to know first. You need to know the words. Then you need to know what those words sound like when a native speaker says them. That way you understand them. And finally, last, you need to know grammar. You need to know the right order, right conjugations, and all that. But that's the contrary to popular belief. That's the least important thing, because even if you know all the grammar rules, if you don't know the vocabulary, you will not understand the language. If you know all the vocabulary in a text but not the grammar, have no idea how grammar works, you'll be able to guess what the text is all about. Yeah, you'll make some false assumptions here and there, but for the most part, you'll understand everything. If you know the grammar but not the vocab, okay, you know the tenses, but if you don't know the words, you have no idea what you're talking about. Pronunciation is extremely important if you want to understand native speakers, because it's one thing to understand text, language on text, on paper, or on a screen. It's a very different one to understand those words, even if you know all the words. When a native speaker speaks quickly and all the words kind of cluster in one long incomprehensible sentence, that sounds weird. You need to know the right pronunciation. Yeah, so you need to train yourself for that. Then there's the speaking part, and we'll include writing here, because the same exercises that are good for to work on the speaking are good to work in the writing. So in order to speak, you need to work on your fluency. Fluency is the ability to think fast enough in the language to be able to form sentences and to be able to participate in a conversation. No fear of speaking. You can put your thoughts into words without hesitation. You don't run out of words. Yeah, that's fluency. Then there's accuracy, precision, which is fluency is not just speaking well. Yeah, you could be fluent but not accurate. Fluency means being able to say what you want to say. Yeah, you're able to talk. Accuracy means you're able to talk well. You could be accurate but not fluent, or fluent but not accurate. You can speak all day, lots and lots of mistakes. You can also know all the grammar and be able to form sentences that are correct, but if maybe it takes you forever because or you're afraid of speaking, so then you're not fluent, you're accurate. Yeah, you could write the sentences, if you can give the correct answer, but then when you're face to face with native speakers, you're afraid of speaking, or you can't think fast enough and form the sentences fast enough to have a conversation, because conversations tend to be messy, fast, Yeah, and the conversation will move on if you are too slow to form sentences to participate. So yeah, you need to work on both. There are different exercises. And finally, we get pronunciation again. Yeah, I've got it twice. Pronunciation is very important, both to understand and to speak a language. If you have no idea how pronunciation works, and this happens to Spanish speakers all the time when learning English, they have no idea how English pronunciation works. Um, so they completely mispronounce things. So they sound terrible when they speak. That's one thing. Often, a native English speaker won't be able to understand them because of how different they sound from what English actually should sound like. But also, they won't understand English themselves because the concept of, well, they know the words on paper, but if, for example, if this sounds, this is mountain, but if to you it sounds like mountain, you don't understand. Yeah, a Spanish speaker will say mountain, and that means that when they hear mountain in a sentence, often they won't understand. So you need to learn the right pronunciation, both speak well and also to be able to understand native speakers. So how do we develop all this? All but accuracy, by the way, is the thing that will help you write well, and we'll talk about that later. How do we develop all those skills? Like, these are five problems actually, because this is the same thing. Obviously, recognizing sounds is not as hard as recognizing them and then imitating them correctly, but yeah, it's one skill. Pronunciation is one skill, I would say. There's a solution for each one of these problems, a specific solution. There are different ways of learning it, but the way they teach it in schools is learn all the grammar rules for years, learn lists of vocab, do occasional listening, and at some point you'll and occasional speaking, and at some point you'll be able to, in a decade or so, you'll be able to speak a little bit. Waste of time. If you're doing things like Duolingo, things like that, basically you learn none of this. You're wasting your time. If you're doing comprehensible input with lots and lots and lots of videos, watching lots of videos or reading text, you'll learn this and this quite slowly, but you learn them slowly but surely, better than with classes, but it will still be very slow. You do none of this, and you'll this will be slow as well, very slow. If you're just reading, you won't learn it, and if you're watching videos, you learn it, but yeah, not great. So how do we do it? First, we need to learn vocabulary. How do we learn vocabulary? Three ways. There are three ways to learn vocabulary. First one is spaced repetition or repetition. Yeah, this is the way we used to learn in school. They used to make us learn this. This was the level. They gave us a list of 10 sentences for home to memorize. There are no sentences. Words in English, like dog, ball, I don't know, school, and then in Spanish next to it, and you have to rewrite them over and over again until you, and hope to remember them. Spaced repetition is you see that, you review a list, and then next day you review the same list, and in 3 days again. So and this is a proven method, right? Spaced repetition. You see something, and then you see it regularly, and then slowly the frequency with which you have to review it uh, drops, because the more you review it, the more you remember it, and eventually you just have to occasionally review it, and finally it just you end up memorizing it. It works. is very slow. This just sheer repetition, just repeating things aloud, um, or just looking at lists, especially with no context. No, it works if you do it right. Space repetition, the concept. Then we get comprehensible uh, input. This is every YouTuber's favorite. Oh, I can't call it context as well. Learn in context. You see the words inside a sentence, you hear them, context, and eventually you learn them in context. There are problems with that as well. I'll tell you. I'll tell you why. What's the main problem with it? It's definitely more effective than just learning a vocabulary. So let's learn kitchen vocab, and you have a list of 10 words for the kitchen, and you learn them all like fork, spoon, this, and then the next day vocabulary for something else. That's extremely ineffective, boring, slow. This, if you say you hear a conversation about the kitchen, it's more likely that you remember the words. But again, studies show that you need to see each word 10, 12, maybe 20 times in context to remember it. And the problem is, after the first 500, 1000, 2000 even words, and you need around 10,000 words to be fluent, frequency of the words drops dramatically. Yeah, it's a Pareto principle. First few thousand words are super common. After that, they not common at all. So you need to do insane amounts of watching, reading, etc., to see all the other words in context enough times. Very slow. This is why learning Spanish and that kind of uh, comprehensible input channels and all that, they're a massive waste of time. Okay, so what's the solution? The solution is mnemonic associations. Mnemonic associations are the best way to memorize lots of items quickly. You can memorize long lists very quickly. The people who are the best at this, memory champions, they can memorize thousands of words in a day. I don't. Normally I go for a few hundred. I've done over 1,000, spending all day doing it. It was a lot of work, but 100, couple hundred words a day, very doable, and it's not too tiring if you train yourself to do it. Basically, you take a word and you create a mental image for it, and then you take the meaning of the word and you create a mental image for it. Yeah. And then you create a story with it. Something that's shocking, weird. Sex and violence works as well. Something that's kind of weird and unmemorable. Mental image of the word, mental image of something that sounds like the new word, and then you associate them, and you have to actually visualize it. And if you it sounds weird now, but if you practice, you can get very good at it. You can start with 20 or 30 words a day, which is already a lot compared to what people learn. People learn 3 words, 5 words a day, and they'll be like, yeah, eventually I'll be fluent. No, if you learn 3 words or 5 words a day, it'll take you a decade to learn a language well. If you learn 20, 30 a day, it'll be much faster. And if you learn this skill and you're able to memorize over 100 words a day, it'll take weeks for you to understand it well. Yeah, the language. So my advice is to learn the association technique and combine it with this too. This is like steroids for this too. Yeah, spaced repetition, seeing the same words over and over and over again. It works if you do a lot of it and you do it for a very long time. If you associate the vocab and then occasionally review it, you need you need to review it much less frequently and much fewer times, and you'll still remember it. And also, if you associate the vocab and then listen to the language, read it, most of the most common, if you've already associated the most common words, you'll understand a lot. So you'll be able to, and if you understand more from day one, and then you keep memorizing more and more vocab, you'll be able to very easily read or listen to the language, understand. If you understand more, you can do more of it. You get more stuff in context. You can do more in less time, and it's a snowball that keeps going faster, getting bigger. So yeah, this is it's like basically it's like injecting steroids and on this too. It makes it much faster. Yeah. So this is how you learn vocabulary. Next one, pronunciation. And here, how do you learn pronunciation? Well, you need to listen. If you don't listen, you'll never learn the right pronunciation. This is a mistake people here make all the time. People who've been going to school 8, 10, 12 years of English classes in Spain, and they still can they sound really bad when they speak English and they don't understand much. This is because they didn't do enough listening. So first thing is massive amounts of listening. If you don't do this, you'll never understand or speak the language well. There's no way around it. Massive amounts of listening. What and how? Well, I recommend podcasts. Podcasts by native speakers for native speakers. Yeah, avoid the Spanish with this guy and all that. Just start directly with the uh, native speaker podcast. If you memorize a lot of vocab with associations, you'll understand this pretty easily soon. If you do enough of it. That's one thing. The other thing is listening and repeating. If you listen and repeat sentences, something like Glossica or any Tatueva or any kind of, you can use YouTube videos for this as well. The same sentences over and over again. A few hundred sentences a day, and you repeat the same list tomorrow and then the day after, and you try to sound as close as possible to what you listening to, so that you pay attention to detail. You try to sound as close as possible. All right. So you slowly start to sound more and more like a native speaker. You'll never sound 100% like a native speaker. I mean, you might if you work enough on it. Um, but it's a lot of hard work. But you probably prefer learning another language. It's like the amount of effort that will take you to go from 98% to 99% correct in a language, like on a native speaker scale, is more than what it would take you to go from zero to conversational in another language. So it's easier to learn more languages instead, and it's more fun. But yeah, people are like accents, people are perfectionists as well. If you want to sound like a native speaker, you have to do this over and over and over again. Especially also in the beginning, because it will help uh, your pronunciation a lot. Next one is active recall. Listening to a lot of podcasts works, but it's slow because it's not structured, it's just absorbing the language. You don't want to do 2,000 hours of dreaming Spanish. Do this as well. Combine it with mass listening. What's this? Same thing as this. List of sentences. Yeah, sentence after sentence. This is deliberate practice. 1 hour of deliberate practice is worth more than 10 hours of just casually listening. Casual listening is helpful as well, but deliberate practice is where you make the most improvement. You listen to sentences without looking at what you're listening to, try to understand, and then you check if you understood it correctly or not. And you do it with the next sentence and the next sentence, and you do it with hundreds of sentences a day. Again, you need to know enough vocab for that. So make sure you're doing your association of your daily associations. If you combine these two, you learn hundreds, thousands of sentences very quickly in a few weeks, and you'll be able to understand and speak very well. Finally, talking talking about speaking. Uh, Language islands. These are mostly for speaking, but if you create an audio file and you listen to it over and over again with the language islands, you can do these two exercises and also this one with the language island. In fact, this is the better than podcast at first to also binge listen to, because if you transfer your own sentences into the language, create a nice sounding audio file or playlist, and you listen to them over and over and over again, you learn all the relevant vocabulary and grammar very quickly just by listening. And then you can also listen and repeat those sentences and do this one as well. Yeah, this is all you need to do to understand a language fast, spoken language. Also, if you are learning a language that's not written with the same alphabet as ours, like if you're learning Korean or Japanese or Arabic, don't bother learning the writing system until you understand the language well, spoken language. Trying to learn the script, a difficult script, is really going to slow you down. You don't want to do that. If you want results, you want to do all these exercises and learn the language phonetically, right? Okay, next. Now, let's talk about speaking a language. To speak a language well, you need to work on your fluency, your accuracy, and your pronunciation. How do we develop these three skills? Easy. Not easy. It's simple but not easy. It's going to be hard work, but it's simple. The things you need to do are simple. You just have to do them, right? It's like me telling you, go work out, eat well. It's simple. You know what you should do, but you don't do it because you're lazy. This is the same. You know what to do. It's simple. You just have to consistently do it. So, speaking. First one is fluency. And for fluency, the first thing you should do and the best thing you can do is, again, language islands. Language islands are the best thing to develop your speaking skills fast. What are language islands? You write down a list of everything you normally say. So you write down a list of all the situations you normally find yourself in, all the interactions you usually have. It's a good idea to take notes in your daily life. Okay, I've been to the bakery, I've been doing this and that, I've talked to that homeless guy in the street, blah, blah, blah. And everything you normally do. Then everything you like to do as well. The conversations you'd like to have. You make a list of those as well. Especially if you're going on a trip. You write down all the interactions you think you'll have to have in the trip, or you'd like to have. And then you also write a list of all the conversation topics, all the things you normally talk about. Storytelling is also a good one for this. You write all the stories that you normally talk about. You've got a long, nice list of interactions, conversation topics, and stories. And then you write down for each one of them everything you would say in that interaction, in that conversation, about that topic, or when telling that story. That's a long list. It should be over 1,000 sentences. And then you translate it all into the language that you're learning. You create an audio file, you binge listen to it, and you repeat the sentences aloud over and over again. Yeah? This, you read them aloud over and over again. Next thing will be also important. Listen and repeat. You take a list of sentences with audio, and you listen and repeat over and over again. Really mechanical. You develop a muscle memory. Simple. These two things combined will very quickly fix any fear of speaking with people you might have. Because if you listen and repeat a few hundred sentences every day, your accent will get better, your fluency will get better, you'll get used to saying complete sentences instead of thinking, how should I grammar this and that, and which word was it? No, you just repeat sentence after sentence. This is how This is how an athlete learns a language. Yeah, this is how an athlete trains. You're training for conversation. You're developing muscle memory. You're repeating thousands of sentences aloud. Same thing with this. But it's your own sentences. So you read them aloud over and over. Also, create an audio file, which listen to them over and over. So you've got an idea when you read them aloud. You've got an idea on how to pronounce them, and you keep doing that over and over. And the last thing would be recall or translation. Um, and this is very simple. Once you've got a document in two languages, so in your language and the language that you're learning, what you should do is read it in your language, verbally translate into the language that you're trying to learn. Yeah? You read a sentence in English and you try to say it in Spanish, and then you check if you say it correctly or not. And then if you say it wrong, then you repeat it aloud correctly. And then you do it with the next sentence, and so on. And this will help you, first of all, think in the language. That you'll get used to form sentences quickly and say them. Yeah, so it will help you fluency, but also you'll see where you're making your mistakes, you'll fix them. Then by saying them aloud, just repeating the sentence aloud, and eventually you'll be able to say everything, all your list of sentences for conversations, interactions, different topics, all your stories. You'll be able to say everything with very few mistakes, good pronunciation, and fluently without having to think about it. Is this enough to speak a language fluently? Yes. Do you only need 1,000 sentences to speak a language fluently? No, but the thing is, if you've memorized 1,000 sentences plus extra sentences you've been doing listening and repeating with, all the grammar you need, you will have learned it by doing this. And also a lot of vocab. And also you've been learning extra vocab from listening and doing the associations. So then all those sentences, you know all those structures, you can use them to create more and more sentences, because once you know how to say I don't like that or I like that, that one thing, like I like boxing, you can say also I like, and you change the word. Yeah, so you can create infinite variations once you know all these sentences. So this will be enough to speak language fluently. Finally, let's talk about writing. Let's talk about writing. How to write well in a foreign language. How to learn to write well. Super easy. I recommend you do everything else first. Learn all the vocab, memorize vocabulary, lots of listening, speaking, and all that. Or if you want to jump straight into writing, at least try to memorize vocab first. And I recommend reading as well for this one. If your goal is to speak well, you don't need to read that much. But if you want to write well, reading the language a lot. It's going to be very helpful. But then, I'm going to show you the best exercise you can do to write well in a language, in a foreign language. You go to Google Translate, or even better, DeepL, and you have here you've got your own, let's say English, and you want to learn Portuguese, and you want to learn to write in Portuguese. I assume you write well in English. You write whatever you want to. You want to learn to write articles, let's say. Well, you write an article in English, and you mentally translate the whole thing into Portuguese. Yeah. In fact, I recommend typing the whole thing in English. Don't look at this. Translate the English into Portuguese by hand, pen and paper, and then look at this. Take a red pen and correct all your mistakes. You could do it sentence by sentence. So you write one sentence, you self-correct. You write the next one, self-correct. You could do it like that as well. But I recommend writing the whole thing and then you correct the whole thing. I guarantee it'll be full of mistakes already. But the next day you'll do it again, and you make fewer mistakes. And the next day you do it again and over again. And if you keep doing this with one article a day, 30 days, your writing will be pretty good in the language that you learn, assuming that you had some basic knowledge of the language, obviously. But basically, what you need to do is write in your own language. And I'm assuming you write well in your language and that you have a basic knowledge of the language, right? But you write in your language, translate it with your own words, compare it to the translation, self-correct, try again. And you have to do this over and over again. And that's it. But for most of you, you don't need to learn to write in Portuguese or other languages. I mean, learning to write, if you're not a native speaker of English, and I see a lot of you, no offense to anyone, but people from, I don't know, other countries, English is not my native language either. I make mistakes. Everyone makes some mistakes. Some of you write so bad in English. Like, seriously. Some of you write so badly in English. Do this exercise for English. Write it in your language, and or take some writing course maybe, but use this exercise to learn to write better in English, because if your writing is good in English, it makes a huge difference. If your writing is really bad, no one's going to take you seriously online. Yeah, English is the online language, the global language online. You should learn to, if you want to work online at least, you should learn to write well in English. So do this exercise, and hopefully your writing improves. Anyway, I hope you found all these things useful. Explain again, short summary. You need to learn vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar to understand a language. You learn them by memorizing vocabulary with associations, by doing a lot of listening, using language islands, and active recall for listening. And then to speak well, you need I'm blanking now. Yeah, you need fluency. You need to improve your fluency, accuracy, and pronunciation. You improve those by using language islands, doing lots of listening and repeating, and retrieval practice, active recall, translating into the language, and self-correcting. And that's all you need to do. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. Give it a like, share, all that stuff.